Hi
Oh, hi,
everybody.
Tuan.
Sorry there
Hi.
for the technical glitches that we've had this morning. I'm glad to see everyone is in here. Right, welcome everybody. Right, apologies, we've all sort of come in all at the same time, but I'm going to sort of pass over shortly for University of Gloucestershire colleagues to share your screen. So you should be able to do so. I'm being told that I'm the host now, so I should then be able to sort of allow you to share your screen. Hold on, let me just have a look at this. Right, so if you want to, either Angus or Bill, if you want to, feel free to try to share your screen. I'll just quickly give everyone an intro and I'll pass over to Carla shortly. So welcome everybody to today's University of Gloucestershire webinar. My name is Tuan Nguyen and I'm the Relationship Manager for University of Gloucestershire at Gusing Uni. We are joined here today by University of Gloucestershire colleagues, specifically from the School of Arts, who will be giving an introduction to the portfolio of courses, focusing on programs at undergraduate and postgraduate level in architecture, construction, and environment subject areas. So as I'll shortly hand over to Carla Stanton, who is the International Marketing and Student Recruitment Manager at UOG for South Asia. I hope I'm right there in saying that, Carla. But before I do, if I could ask everyone to remain on mute or to mute their microphones for the duration of the webinar. And as a reminder, we are also recording the session. So it is up to you whether you want to switch your webcam on or switch it off. If you have any questions, please enter them in the text box and we'll look to answer them towards the end of the webinar. So thank you all for attending, and I will now hand over to Carla.
Thanks, Tuan, and thanks for organising this morning's session for us. We're really pleased to be able to chat to you all today about our courses within our School of Arts, and as Tuan has said, specifically this morning, our courses and some of our really exciting new courses within architecture, construction and environment. As Tuan has said, I'm Carla. I work within the international recruitment team with a specific focus on South Asia. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Angus Pryor, who is the head of School of Arts, and by Bill Burford, who is the academic subject leader for the courses within the architecture, construction and environment arena. So I'm going to hand over to Angus and Bill in a moment, and they will run through their presentation, and we will try and allow, hopefully, for around sort of 10 minutes at the end, if we can, for some questions. Just to note that these questions will be specifically answering about the courses within this subject area. If you have any other questions on other subject areas, then I'll pop the email address in for you to direct those questions through to that India inbox. So, okay, without further ado, I think I'll hand over to Angus probably just to give a quick introduction to the school.
Lovely.
Thanks, Angus.
Thank you, Carla. Yes, hello everyone. Just to give you a bit of context of the school and how the ACE area is placed within it. We've almost trebled the size of the school in the last 6 years. We've been hugely successful around the kind of creative industries. We now have 5 subject groups. So ACE is one, which Bill will talk about in detail, but we also have art, which has illustration and fine art, photography, which has editorial advertising, photo documentary and journalism and photography. We have a design subject group, which has advertising, fashion, graphic design, interior design. We have performing arts and production, which has drama, dance and performing arts. And we're spread over 4 campuses over the university. So we have a kind of foothold in every campus, and we have part of our kind of agenda is around the community. As you can probably tell, the university has hugely invested in us over the last few years with several new buildings, and Bill's area has been hugely successful, starting from a kind of landscape architecture perspective, and we've moved with huge numbers part of that agenda for us was around postgraduate development. So we have one of the biggest postgraduate communities in the universities, second only to the business school. That's led us to having a very excellent research community now. We were in the research excellence framework and we've just submitted, and we're hugely excited about that. We have a huge arena of PhD students now and studentships, so that's really exciting. But the big thing for us with India is we are one of the big international schools. We've driven the international agenda. Bill particularly is part of the international focus group that we work within the school, and we have particular interest in India. So I've worked in India about 6 or 7 projects now. I've had exhibitions. I've worked with colleagues in the Indian Habitat Centre with Dr. Akapande, who some of you may know. We did an exhibition on the underground with the photography students. We had fine art students coming over. And we're currently working on a big exhibition in Bihar with the Patna Museum. So that's the next big project for us. So as you can tell, we're very engaged with India. We're very enthusiastic about Indian culture and Indian students, both in country and also coming to us. We've supervised PhD students from India who've gone home and been very successful. So from our perspective, this is a very exciting opportunity for us, and we're really engaged. And as Carla said, if you've got any questions about any of the other areas, we can set up different webinars, or we can have a one-to-one discussions with you around kind of potential kind of other growth areas for you. But that's a general introduction. If I hand you over to Bill, he can be now very specific. So thank you, Carla.
Hi. I'm going to share my screen with you. I don't know if you can actually see me at this moment in time, but hopefully you can see this presentation, which should be on the screen now.
Yeah, we can see it, Bill.
Great stuff. Okay, so this is sort of a general introduction to me and in this particular subject area. Yeah, my name's Bill Burford. I've come through the construction industry and built environment industry through the UK through my career pathway. Initially starting the ground, working as a blue collar worker in construction, doing groundwork, which is very much setting out sort of construction areas, building the drains, building the underground foundations, and physically a very, very demanding work. And it has been seen as being a dirty trade up until probably quite recently, but it's a very interesting, very dynamic industry, and it connects beautifully well with the construction, with the built environment industries. And so this is architecture, construction and environment courses have the opportunity of actually allowing you to progress into a very dynamic development industry, which is very much future focused. These are professional disciplines. They're all responsible for planning and designing the world around us. So everything that you see outside of your windows has been designed or modified or replicated by someone. It's not necessarily sort of natural. And so people are behind that particular development. And so these disciplines actually reflect all of those industries. The courses I'm going to talk briefly about today are the undergraduate courses in architecture, interior architecture and design, landscape architecture, urban planning, and quantity surveying. And you can see that I've actually also listed the postgraduate courses that are also replicated by these particular names. The reason I'm going to talk about them in a great amount of detail is that most of these courses are 4-year programs. That is, the requirement is, certainly in the UK for training, and for most of the world, is an undergraduate course of 3 years, plus a year either in industry and then a year followed up in terms of a master's course. In the UK, most of our master's courses are only 1 year. If you study these elsewhere in the world, like Australia or America, for at least 2 years. So it means that there's an opportunity for students to actually progress onto, which is really cost effective for them. But also in the UK, they can actually utilize the 2-year working visa to gain professional experience. So the only course that at the master's level, which is not replicated in this particular discussion, is digital construction. And the digital construction course is a course which is utilized by any students which have come from a built environment or a construction industry and want to progress into something which is future focused on what we call BIM, building information modeling, and actually progressive towards digitized environments in construction. I haven't specifically focused on this day, but if you want more information about digital construction, which is becoming a really exciting internationally orientated course, please get in contact with Carla, and I'm quite happy to do an additional webinar, which is specifically about digital construction. So why study these courses? Well, the future of this is that life is rapidly changing. We're looking for individuals who are speculative. We're looking for individuals who are thinking about the future. People who are thinking about sustainability, are worrying about the changes that the world is going through. We're going through a pandemic at the moment, and this has a dramatic effect on the way that we live and the way we work. And so we're looking for individuals who are the next big thinkers, the next organizers, the next designers and developers. They're very much the future of the industries worldwide. And there's been rapid change over a long period of time. You have to think about the United Nations statistic on urban development, 2050 being the date that they're looking at. That's 73% of the population moving from the country towards the city. That's a startling figure. Our cities at the moment can't cope with the changes that are actually being placed on them. So this rapid global change seen here in Singapore between 2000 and now 2021 shows this massive change in terms of planning, in terms of the design of buildings, in terms of the design of our open spaces. So we need to start to think about the way that we design these spaces, the way that we live in places, and how that's going to sort of impact on us as humans in the future. We're looking for individuals who have the capability of spatial design, that is an understanding of two-dimensional and three-dimensional at the same time. All of these particular programs focus on a two-dimensional design. On the left-hand side, we look at a sort of a CAD model. This is planning out a building. On the right-hand side, we're looking at exactly the same image within 3 dimensions and understanding how we move through these particular spaces. So all of these programs have the capability of learning software which actually develops these particular areas. The only difference to that would be in quantity surveying, which is very much a program which is focused on the actual project management and therefore the start right to the finish and handing over to a client in a very cost-effective manner. On construction sites, certainly in the UK, we're focusing very heavily on technology and sustainability. And this particular image with the construction individual focusing on an iPad is only really replicating what this individual can see. And we work with something called software called building information modeling. And that is the ability to be able to work out whether there are going to be clashes between certain types of trade structures going on site at the same time. So these are really critical parts of our work. It's dramatically going to affect the way that we do any form of construction in the near future. So we're looking for students who've got the ability to understand technology. We're looking for students who can actually start to create. And anybody who's got the ability to do social media has the ability to be able to be communicative on site with people.
The university has been asked to create these courses by industry because there's a demand for them within construction. It's an evolving industry, so courses always have to move in line with how the industry changes. They're new courses, and they are being tailored to suit the changes within the industry. Core issues facing the construction and property industry moving into the future primarily will be sustainability and looking at how the industry can focus on the new technology and policies that the government are providing.
So all of our courses have sustainability embedded within them. We have a really strong working relationship with our nearest businesses. All of our built environment industry locally being invested within the development of these courses. So what you get from us is strong links with businesses and locally, but also visiting lecturers coming directly from industry, and also the opportunity of these courses being at the cutting edge at this moment in time and beginning.
Our lecturers have a really good relationship with pupils in terms of onward development as a career. They all have been or currently are industry professionals, some still running their own businesses that sort of are working internationally. They're not just trying to get students through, they're trying to get people up to a standard of actually, yeah, I would like to employ you when you graduate. They have a lot of local connections, but also connections with businesses that are sort of nationwide. You know, that was good for me because I've managed to find work placements and experience within those local companies without having to travel too far from where I'm living at uni. I'm feeling pretty confident about the next step, and I think the courses set us up really good for the future.
So you can see that there's a sort of global demand, or certainly a UK demand for these particular courses. It's also a global demand, and I think the key thing for us is an understanding that these courses are future focused. They are disciplines which we need now in terms of construction and also built environment courses. They focus on the economics and the community within particular spaces, urban areas, rural areas. It doesn't really matter tremendously where these locations are. But it is very much more about people. And in order to be able to get the right type of building design, the right type of space design, you have to talk to people. You have to find out what they want. You have to find out what their needs are. And in order to do that, you have to talk to them individually. You can't expect a survey to provide that information for you. But the courses that we have designed here at the university are very much focused on that type of environment. So our students will be out, they'll be surveying individuals, they'll be talking to people, they'll be doing what's called planning for real, setting up scenarios where children, where adults, where elderly work with them to be able to explore a range of different scenarios to find out what the best way of designing space for those particular communities will be. This is Gloucester, which is very close to Cheltenham, which is where the courses are based. And Gloucester is a site of a historic city dating back to the Romans. It is also was a pre-industrial city and has a very strong community. But what it lacked was really good, strong retail spaces. And so part of the urban regeneration scheme dating back to the 1970s, the development of what's called now Gloucester Quays, which was in the home of the wharfs and the waterways areas, developed a retail space which has been highly successful, great praise in terms of awards, and it's utilised all of the existing buildings and retrofitted those. And that's great architecture. That really demonstrates the ability to be able to hold on to the history, the heritage of the past, the conservation of those, and actually work with something which actually developed what we call place, a sense of place in an individual location, which is not just about tearing down all of them and building things which are new. We have to evolve. We have to think about how we develop live and work spaces. And so this image, which is speculative, is still about maybe the way that we ought to be living in the future. Whether you see that as a glass wall on the right-hand side or a waterfall is entirely up to you. But all of those things are possible. We just have to dream, and we just have to actually start to think about a vision for a new development. So I think when we're thinking about where we are in terms of this global pandemic, I think most people have actually started to rethink the way that they live their lives. And so this opportunity of actually developing and designing new buildings, which have evolved and are very much more about community, are part of the way that we design as individuals. So why are we passionate about this particular subject? Well, we've got a really strong heritage. And this is shared right across the world. And so what I think is interesting, this is the Garden City concept by Ebenezer Howard, who is a formative urban planner in early 1800s. The interesting thing is that the best example of a garden city is outside of the UK, and it's in India. Chandigarh is a superb living example of a garden city, best I've seen outside of the UK. Now, we have good garden city movements in the UK, and we're developing this particular movement, but it's certainly Chandigarh is by far the best one, that example that I've seen. So there's a really strong relationship between the urban planning, the past, and moving into the future. Design, technologies, materials, and sustainability. This innovation is really key to these courses. So this is a very good example of what we call architectural technology, and that is a particular discipline in its own right. But it is the fusion of architecture and architectural engineering. And so this upwards or upside down ziggurat design building is a typical example of how you might sort of think about how you defy gravity by actually creating a short, small base and actually building out from that to actually provide more space at the top levels rather than at the bottom levels. This is a school in the UK. So I think one of our biggest key concerns is the global challenges which are facing us all. On the right, we've got a variety of different logos associated with this, but BREEAM is a metric which actually measures sustainability. And so we're all aiming towards our landscapes, our buildings, to have a zero carbon footprint. And we face these great global challenges. How do we design our way out? How do we plan our way out of poverty? And it's a very, very hard challenge for the next future generations to be able to think about. But that's what we breed within the students that study these courses. It's not just a toolkit for sustainability. It's more of a way of being, a way of living, and it's a way of designing. So you don't compromise on sustainability because your client requires you to do so. You have those morals, you use that ethos to be able to design within that. So how do we get you there? Well, we work with you, we train you, we help students to understand the positives, the negatives of space. We get them to understand and analyze key spaces that exist. We get them to speculate, to innovate, to use ideas. And this might look like something which is fictitious in the future, but let's think about this. We're living in an age where we're starting to think about the reduction in diesel and petrol engines. By 2030 in the UK, we're supposed to have phased out the sale of those and be optimizing our electric car system or a hydrogen-based car system. So it's not too far into the future to imagine that this is going to happen. And actually imagining this and finding somebody who can engineer it is the idea of Imagineering, the opportunity to actually conceive of something and develop it. I think this will happen. This, for me, is a really strong way of seeing an urban environment where you've got a good balance between grey spaces, the buildings, and the green spaces, where our well-being is important to the way that we're also part of a living and breathing environment. We focus on spatial design. We focus on experimentation, on failure. That sounds like an odd thing for education, but actually if we fail and we learn from our failings and we move forward, then it's not a failing, it's actually part of our experimental process. And this is really key for students actually within these particular disciplines. Our courses reflect what happens in industry practice. And so this is a zonal mapping using something called GIS, Geographic Information Systems, to be able to assess, in this particular case, the heat and also the cold points on the landscape This is also part of the development. This is what happens in practice when we're using construction. We are starting to think about the way that the buildings are facing in particular aspects, how our buildings are going to be affected by the cold, how they're going to be affected by the heat. And this allows us to communicate, but it also allows our students to replicate things before they start to graduate and move into practice. So they are at the cutting edge of the industry and the requirements of the industry. We use a collaborative studio environment. This is a landscape architecture student. Here we have students in about 4 or 5 groups, 10 different nationalities involved in these. And actually, it's about learning about multidisciplinary activity. All these disciplines work together on construction sites. So as you start to do this particular project, you understand your particular relationship with the project and also your individual right next door to you who might be an architect or a civil engineer and their particular perspectives on these particular disciplines. We train you in professional skills, so surveying, AR, VR types of skills, and we focus on projects which are real. And this is a key ethos within our courses. It's a focus on the idea of real sites and real clients and the real issues that are faced by those particular projects, as opposed to speculative and probably theoretical orientated projects. The more real projects you do, the more times you speak to a client, the better your ability to be able to communicate and work with others on site. Now, this particular image here is of a retail cafe, but this is a software, and this is called Enscape. And this allows you to give absolutely photorealistic check within a setting on a continuous live basis. We do precedent visits, and probably the heart of what we do in terms of learning about particular places is to go and visit Hong Kong. And it's sort of an example of what we would do on an international type of visit. But most of our visits tend to be in the UK, and we go out and visit as part of all the modules and units we actually students study. And a key part of it is actually working with practices and practice professionals. So we have a variety of practice professionals coming in from local practice and also national practices. International practices is very much sort of the key focus within sort of the pandemic situation. And being able to use expertise from India, from America, from Brazil is fantastic. It gives us students an opportunity of confidence and understanding of how their particular designs will work. So what are our facilities like? Well, this is Francis Close Hall campus. This is a campus where the ACE courses are based, and it's a beautiful, what we call a collegiate, Tudor orientated, Gothic Tudor orientated, and it's a collegiate campus, very much modelled on Cambridge and Oxford universities. And the architecture, construction, environment courses are all based within this building. We have really superb facilities in prefabrication, model construction, specialist software, all state-of-the-art in terms of the industry, high-spec machines, and we have collaborative studios where students from a variety of different disciplines can work together. Now, this breeds a really good, strong confidence. It also allows you to understand these disciplines in their own right, and it also develops the opportunities for collaborative and entrepreneurial activity. So you might meet your future business partner at this university as part of your study in the studio. These are the facilities, and these are all brand new facilities. These open in August. So the first cohort of students that arrive in September will get to be part of this particular facilities. And you can access sort of a 360 fly-through this particular facility on the university website. This is an interior design student, part of the interior architecture student. And this is a good example of our work with local businesses. So this is out on a construction site in Cheltenham with Kier Construction, who are a global player in construction industries. The courses are very much professional level careers. They aren't purely focused on trade, and we would expect students to be in a situation where they will be in offices and also on site working, so they'll be communicating with contractors and builders. They are promoting, I suppose they work in private sector, public sector and charitable sectors. That's in the UK, but across the world, it's very similar. So you could have a very strong, good economic prospects in a variety of different industries, and they are in global demand. At the moment, it is incredibly difficult for a student not to get a job, especially if they're graduates. Most of the industry is looking for really good quality students out to be able to move into industry. We're ultimately trying to focus on those individuals who will be visionary leaders. So the opportunity of developing the confidence in the student before they leave university, progressing that into postgraduate is really important. So for the particular pathways, I think this is really important, is to understand that architecture, most people understand architecture is a long process in terms of studying and also training. And the study part of it is 5 years. That involves a 3-year undergraduate course and a 2-year master's course, one of which is very much working in industry. Optionally, there's a year out of work experience between the 3rd year and the 4th year, and it falls in line with what's called an MArch, Masters in Architecture. This particular pathway that's sort of described on the screen is really what you will require in order to be able to get your chartered professional qualification. At the moment, we're working towards an accreditation by the Architectural Review Board, which is really important for students. So accreditation is likely to happen in June 2022. It doesn't matter too much for students who are coming in 2021, but they will have accreditation when they leave, and this is really important in terms of employment. Interior architecture pathway is mostly a 3-year program. There is an optional to go on to a master's in interior architecture and design, and the interior architecture focus of the university is very much a sort of a broad spectrum of course. It's about retrofitting existing architecture and the opportunity of breathing new life into existing architecture. It gives an opportunity for students to actually start to think about their future career pathway. And an interior architect is mostly focused on the interface between architecture and interior design. You focus on probably a 1 to 3 year industry experience after your course before you can actually take a professional exam. At that particular point, once the professional exam is completed, you become a chartered interior architect. But I am sort of emphasizing the word chartered because this is a really critical part of these particular disciplines. These words are protected. Architect, you can only be an architect if you've studied and trained to be an architect. If you're chartered, it means that that particular terminology means you're a high quality professional. In the UK, these are in demand, not just because of the necessity in terms of business, but also because there are insufficient numbers of these chartered individuals. And this is happening because there is a drain towards international work. So you can see that these particular career pathways will be in constant demand in the future. The landscape architecture pathway, as Angus mentioned, has been at this university since 1961. We celebrate our 60th year this year. The undergraduate course is 3 years, and there's a master's in landscape architecture which follows that. And then post 2 years, you can take your professional exam and become a chartered landscape architect. So I suppose really, where do these courses leave me? Well, at the top there, the focus is very much on individuals or students becoming either chartered architects or chartered architectural technologists. And the difference between the architect and the architectural technologist is about building tectonics. That's actually the construction and the detailed construction of a site. So architectural technologists focus on the materials, and they focus on the ways we can build and the ways we innovate. They're becoming really important differences between those particular courses. And there are as many many architectural technologists in the industry as there are architects. Architects focus on the aesthetic design and the creation of beautiful buildings. Interior architecture and interior design is a good fusion between those two. And the difference between that is the reuse and reactivity of buildings and the work with architects on construction sites. So an interior architect would effectively design from the inside out. Interior designers focus on the aesthetics of how we develop and how we live. Landscape architects focus on the external spaces, will design almost everything apart from the actual building. And urban designers is very much a fusion between architecture and landscape architecture, and they focus on the design of buildings, but the design of a range of buildings together in an urban environment. But these particular professions go towards other pathways. So you could become an environmental consultant. You could also become a product designer or a set designer or a furniture designer. And we wouldn't see those as being a failure because you haven't completed it. It's just a different pathway. All the skills are there to be able to understand and how you develop. And I suppose life is very much is a very different pathway for some people. Some people will focus on that particular key area and then live and breathe it right to the end of their career. However, others like diversity. And I think the opportunity of flexing within your career pathway is really important. So you don't feel as if you get stuck within that particular discipline for a long period of time. Urban planner, urban designer. The reason I focus on this is that the undergraduate course is very much about urban planning. The postgraduate course allows you to become an urban designer. And they are two different disciplines, but this is a dual purpose course, 4-year M-Plan course, recognized in the university, but also recognized in the UK as a really important discipline. And urban planners will work with communities, they'll develop strategies, policies for others to design with. Urban designers then take those strategies and actually to start to develop both the commercial, the retail, the design of residential areas, consideration of public open spaces. And this is, again, it's a 4-year course allows you to take professional experience outside of that, and you must do that in order to be able to become a licenseship member of the RTPI, which is the Royal Town Planning Institute, before you can actually take the professional exams. So the 2-year working visa post career training is a really important part of this. So this sort of example on the right hand side is Bristol, which is about an hour's journey from Gloucester and Cheltenham. And this is a very classic case of happening in the urban regeneration of that particular city. This is happening all over the world. And so urban planners have a very distinct career pathway ahead of them. Now, quantity surveyor is also a chartered surveyor. And so I've listed it as a chartered surveyor because ultimately your qualification when you come out of the institute, that's the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, is chartered surveyor. But it does allow you to become a variety of different types of surveyor. And this is a quantity surveyor. And the quantity surveyor is it's the manager that manages the entire build from the starting point to the end point where the keys are handed over to the client. They are the coordinator of the production. They're not part of the production team. They facilitate the opportunity of working with the client to set the brief, to set the budget. They then focus on the health and safety. They focus on the cost benefit analysis of that particular project. They work with the contractors. They work with all of the various different disciplines on the site, and they manage the entire site. Incredibly important role. And the skills that are developed by a quantity surveyor are second to none because it allows them to become a variety of different types of jobs and move into different areas, including project management. So where does a course take you if you become an urban planner or a town planner? Well, we hope that you'll become a chartered town planner or urban designer or urban planner. You're ultimately focused on something like infrastructure. So you could be planning large scale buildings, roads. HS2 is a good example of the high-speed network of trains in the UK. And that is very much down to, at the moment, it's sitting at about 2,000 planners focusing on that particular building, that particular design scheme. But you could become a property consultant, you could become an environmental consultant as a result of it. And it's private and public sector orientated, a really important job. Infrastructure like solar power schemes, wind power schemes are very much the domain of a planner. Quantity surveyors, they're chartered surveyors. They could well be land and property surveyors. Again, they could be property consultants. They could be employers agents, which are a way of actually facilitating the sale of buildings externally without actually using other retail consultants. They're project managers. They very much focus on construction law and claims. So they can become specialists in that particular area. But they could also become BIM coordinators, and this is really important in the UK and also in the US. And BIM coordinators are focusing on the idea of bringing buildings together. And I think the key thing here is to understand that in the construction industry, this is in the UK, but all over the world, every single building that's built is unique. Now that's a concern, because if you design an individual building, then you can't have clarity on what the costs are going to be. So the aim of the construction industry going further into the future is what's called digital twinning. And that is to create a building in 3 dimensions, digitally and virtually, before you take it to the site and start to construct it. You therefore have a blueprint in order to do the construction phase. And in doing so, you can replicate the same building thousands, maybe millions of times. You'll know exactly what the cost will be. You'll exactly know what all of the issues would be, all the risks associated with it. And this is where the quantity surveyor comes in. The opportunity of being able to test things out before you go anywhere near the construction site makes these particular individuals an essential component moving into the future. So the courses at the University of Gloucestershire in 2 different ways. We have very much the artistic orientated courses, which are architecture, interior architecture and design, landscape architecture, which are very much coursework orientated, iterative design process, about 30% written sort of seminar content. And that's very much understanding historical and theoretical associated sides of this. But it's also costing and construction detailing and things like that. Whereas we have the BSc courses, which are urban planning, quantity surveying, which are the other way around. And this is sort of focuses on different types of student. So either you have very artistic students or you have very strong analytical students. But there is a combination there, because the architecture course is both. You have to be aesthetic, you have to be artistically orientated, but you also have to be analytical at the same time. So what do you need to get onto these courses? Well, in architecture in the UK, we focus on 136 UCAS points. It's about an AAB. The types of subjects we're looking at would be art, design, psychology, maths, physics, chemistry. The BA interior and the landscape architecture points are lesser points, but it doesn't matter too much on that particular scheme. Urban planning, quantity surveying are 112 points, but we're focusing on the individuals who've got skills in geography, design, maths, physics. For the urban planning and quantity surveying students, we only interview these students. We don't require a portfolio, but certainly for architecture, interior architecture and design, and also landscape architecture, we require a portfolio interview, and I'll come on to that in a moment. For Indian students, we require successful completion of a higher secondary certificate. We also require a 6.0 IELTS overall, with no less than 5.5 in any band. Portfolios are one consideration that most students ask about, and so we were asking you to provide us with a little bit of an insight into you as an individual. We're looking for about 5 to 6 projects, no more, things that you're proud of as an individual. We like to see a mixed range of different types of skill base, and we really want you to demonstrate the skills that you have, but things that you're proud of and things that you can describe to us. So at interview, we might ask you just to tell us why you've done that particular project. You think about it as a narrative, as a story, how you understand it from a client's brief perspective, how you might understand it in terms of the issues associated with it. Those key things are really important. So we're looking for a bit of confidence in an individual. We're looking for sketches and developmental work. We're not looking all the time at finished work. We like to see where you might have struggled. We like to see where you might have resolved that struggle or found a solution. And we're looking for a variety of different types of work. So it could be that you're a sculptor, or it could be that you're a filmmaker, or it could be that you're brilliant at sketching, or you're a model maker. And we want to see a variety of different types of skills because those are the skills that are part of these courses. In architecture, in the first year, you'll be doing art and also be doing model making. So we like to see how you work together, how you work on your own, how you construct things, whether you're competent or you're not competent in those particular areas. And that allows us to be able to help you to progress. This is a typical few sketches from the portfolio that I've had from an interior architect this year. And so we've got things like SketchUp modeling, we've got hand-drawn sketches, we've got cardboard models for product design. But these are really important because it gives us an understanding of the way that students might understand spaces, objects in spaces, how they visualize what an imaginative scheme might look like. And that's about it from me, really. So I'm hoping that you're going to come up with a variety of different questions for me for that. And if there's anything else that you want to ask about the particular courses, please ask away.
Thanks very much, Bill, for that. That's a really, really interesting and insightful, I think, comprehensive presentation on all of the courses within that area.